Hi guys, so for this next video we're going to be looking at what government is. So before we attempt definitions of government in the state, we need to consider a number of concepts related to it. So one of the key principles here is what's known as legitimacy. This refers to a degree to which the state or its government can be said to have the right to exercise power. So a state or government can be said to be legitimate if it has a valid claim to rule. So there are several possible ways in which legitimacy may be claimed. The first one is tradition. This suggests that a system of rule is legitimate if it has existed for a long period of time. So the crown heads of countries such as the UK, Sweden, the Netherlands, they govern as such because they're led by figureheads. So on the other hand, Saudi Arabia, small emirates around the Arabian Gulf, such as Oman and Dubai, are prominent examples where they accept hereditary rule on traditional grounds. The next one is force. This is a controversial basis for rule. The argument is that any government, no matter how it's constituted, could be seen as legitimate if it's able to maintain peace and security within a country. This is sometimes described as might is right. The next part is consent. This has now become the most important criterion for legitimacy. The principle is simple. If a regime enjoys a broad consent of its people, it can be considered legitimate. So that's obvious. The next one then is power. So with regards to power, in a general sense, this means the ability to make other people or groups do what one wants them to do, even if it's against their will. So the first one is coercive power. This is the strongest form. This is force, the use of physical force or threat. The next one is political power. This is power exercised by members of the political community, including parties, their leaders, and other institutions. This usually involves the ability to persuade. Then we've also got influence. This is the weakest form of power. We say power, usually we actually say influence. Newspapers, for example, have power, or public opinion is powerful. The next point that we want to make here is authority. This literally means the right to exercise power rather than the exercise of power itself. Authority is granted to rulers or anyone in power by those over whom power is to be exercised. Without authority, power becomes mere force. And through that you've got types of authority. You've got traditional, which is the right to govern, that exists because authority has existed over a long period of time. Charismatic, if you think about John F. Kennedy in the USA, enjoyed charismatic authority. Hitler, Mussolini, there are other examples of charismatic authority. And you've also got legal rational authority as well. This refers to any rational way of granting authority. In practice, in modern democracies, this is always by election. On the next slide then, you can see here there is some examples of the institutions and the main sources of authority. It's worth having a look through those, just pause that. Next up we've got the idea of sovereignty. And sovereignty literally means ultimate political power and the source of all political authority. This can be sought out, this can be seen by legal sovereignty. This is the ultimate source of all legal authority. So ministers, local authorities, devolved governments in Scotland and Wales. The ultimate source of that power is Parliament. That's what we need to be understanding here. We've also got political sovereignty. This is the location of real political power. So instead of thinking only about where legal power lies in theory, political sovereignty allows us to consider who ultimately makes political decisions in reality. Then we've also got popular sovereignty, which is really a form of popular sovereignty is really a form of political sovereignty. So it relates to those occasions that people themselves seem to be making ultimate decisions. Then we've got the different branches of government. So you've got the legislature, this is the lawmaking, you've got the executive, three main roles for this. The first, to develop new legislation, second, to implement the legislation, and lastly then, to, I can't remember where I was now. Finally, the executive runs the state. So that's the last one there. And then lastly, we've got judiciary. This is the legal system and the judges in particular. They're mainly with criminal matters.